Hello and welcome to Sci-Fi Cafe. This week I talk with author Drew Bryenton all the way over in New Zealand about his new book, Rotten Company, which is out this week from Amazon. He also told me about his writing process and how he comes up with such amazing ideas. Well, at least I thought it was true. Okay, well, I was expecting author Drew Bryenton, but it appears we have Mr. Bun Bun taking over for him today. So I guess in the meantime, I should ask, I have to pass on congratulations to Drew Bryenton for being shortlisted for the Sir Julius Vogel Award for Best Novel for Gad's Army. This is the chap here. Fantastic news. Perhaps we could reveal the author himself.
Ah,
There's the guy.
oh, fresh
Drew,
from out the
hi.
bunny head.
How are you?
It's,
Good to see.
I'll get my proper gear on.
That's it.
There we go.
Nice. I like that. That is very metal. Cool.
Awesome.
I think we might have to talk a bit about Mr. Bun Bun later for those who haven't yet read the book. So we'll come to that. This month in December 2021, we are launching Drew Bryenton's new book, Rotten Company. That's coming out, first of all, on Kindle, followed very shortly by the paperback version for those who like to kill trees. Now, I guess that the book can really only be described in its simplest form as a medieval superhero tale. Could you kind of just summarize that a little bit?
I suppose where it came from was I have a long and nerdy history of comic book interactions. All of the majors, DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, obviously, as a young kid, a subscriber to 2000 AD. And I just thought of the concept of what if a person wants to be the wrong sort of hero for the world that they were in?
You've invented this whole kind of world that the whole book sits in, and one thing that I really love about the whole thing is this concept of the arch. So could you talk about the geometry of this and how that kind of works in a kind of like a physics or magical sense?
It's kind of a bit of both, because there's a lot of ambiguity as to whether or not this was something that was built by aliens using advanced technology, or if, the old chestnut, any technology advanced enough would appear to be magic.
That's the one.
Or if it is actually just magic and they cheated. The idea is that it's a world that was built, and I no spoilers as to why, because you'll find out, but with two tiny suns in the middle.
Yep.
And then a sort of toroid, a donut of water, which has islands in it. So that, imagine asteroids in this donut of water. It spins, so it's got a twist to it, and that means that they're being exposed to the suns and to deep space. So they have a day and night, and you can sail around on the surface of this. So you can sail a boat all the way around the surface of this donut of water into the whole part and into the exterior part. There's no icing, there's no filling. It's not tasty. It's
soggy donut.
Effectively, it's based on a lot of different archetypes of constructed worlds and imaginary worlds. But I wanted something different where even the very basis of the world beneath people's feet was different from the normal world, so that they could really feel justified in doing amazing and silly things, because it's not a normal place.
No, it's true. I got a sense of the kind of scale of the ring world in Larry Niven's novels. Was that the kind of thing you were kind of aiming for, just as a kind of a basis?
Yeah, there's a bit of a combo. I mean, of course, that absolute classic series. Also, a bit of the constructs that the aliens have built in the games of Halo, the series, the big orbitals, which are in Ian M. Banks's work, and he's talking about stuff that's far in the future. So it's a bit of that mashed up, but also a bit of the legendary stuff from I'm down here in New Zealand. There's a lot of Pacific legends about the whole world being an endless ocean with islands in it, and there's a bit of that as well. So it's deliberately trying to mix up the numinous and the magical. And it's arch from both, it looks like if you're standing on the surface of one asteroid, that the ocean goes back up and over you.
Yeah.
but also as an archipelago of islands.
And so Grand Sepulchre, it's such a richly described city. It's got all the smells and the sounds and the sights and stuff. And there's one sequence where characters running through the city, and you just get this kind of blur of everything that's in this amazing city. It's so richly described. And again, was that drawn upon any particular place that you might know or remember or imagine or something? What's the origins of the place?
Well, I'd taken some good advice that some of the best books, the city is a character.
Mm.
The city itself is a character. And China Miéville, your countryman,
Yep.
does brilliant work with this, not only in describing the city of London, but also New Crobuzon in the Perdido Street Station series, all of that. It's also something which is mentioned that the main character of Sir Terry Pratchett's Discworld is Ankh-Morpork.
Yes.
That's the main character. It's about that city going from a medieval city, and the first one burning down when it's like a half-timbered, thatched place, to becoming a city with steam railways and an underground and a working police force and all that in the final book. So making the city into a character was something that I was trying to do, and it's based on, not to give too much away, it's called Grand Sepulchre because it's ruled by an undead king. But the people just get on with their business, like the evil empire. But the evil is just kind of like we're the bad guys, but I've still got to do the laundry. it's still got to go down and get a curry.
Yeah. I guess at least you got the weather a bit nicer than in Ankh-Morpork, I suppose. It's always raining there for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hot and it's dirty and it's smelly and it's tropical. So it's a city which is based on places like Manila, where you have all of these invading powers that put their stamp on it. And yet it's still got its own vibrancy, and it's very lush and teeming and, very fragrant and florid. Places like that, place like Mumbai, where once again, it's a place which has had this vast culture behind it and then has recently been taken over. So there's layers of society, and there's everything going on in terms of trade, different smells, different kinds of cooking, different people with weird costumes from different lands. And a lot of it too is our own city here in New Zealand of Auckland, which is that same kind of thing, like a big tropical port city, subtropical, but it's pretty hot today.
No, there's a lot of jokes in this book because it is a comedy, and it is hilarious. I also kind of like the way that, for me at least, it feels very much like a Terry Pratchett novel. And I know, people will complain, but he can't ever be replaced, and it would be tantamount to blasphemy to even suggest that. But was there any kind of conscious influence from other writers that you felt you wanted to homage or kind of like take it your own kind of take on?
There's lots of Easter eggs if you're a fan of comic fantasy. Obviously, Sir Terry cannot be imitated, but it's the same kind of thing as when Hendrix died, people still had to play rock guitar,
Yes.
It's that kind of thing. I think that comic fantasy is just it's a beautiful thing, and there's no way you can do that without having that comparison now. And that's the mark of have someone gone before you who is an absolute master. So yeah, hey, I've read the Discworld series back to back. There's little things which are a little nudge. There's Monty Python jokes and Easter eggs. There's stuff from Hugh Cook. I've got to mention Hugh Cook. He's an author from New Zealand who moved to Britain.
Nice.
He did a series called Chronicles of an Age of Darkness, and there's a bit of his kind of sense of humor in there. A couple of references that you like, deep cuts if you've read that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So all of those comic fantastic archetypes have sort of fed into things, but you have to sort of make that conscious effort to be a little bit different, but to draw from those mythologies. I mean, when it really comes down to it, anyone working in fantasy, at all, really, is Tolkien's the granddad.
I suppose, yeah, they've got their roots.
You've got these stars in that film, and you're going to get that comparison. But it's about taking what's come before and trying to make new experiences with that.
Yeah, I think you've really
So
done
yeah,
that.
there's lots of deliberate little Easter eggs and things to pick up, and if I say more, then it'll ruin some
It is.
surprises.
It's rife for them.
They're
It's
definitely
lovely.
there.
Yeah, it's a delight kind of finding them. It's really good. So I mean, clearly there's a lot of comic book references, superheroes, and so forth. So is that playing to your personal love of the comic book genre, or are you kind of hitting back against the stereotypes in the way that maybe the boys did, perhaps?
It's maybe a bit of a 50-50. I
Yeah.
mean, I think we've reached a point where you can do a satire
Mm.
because there's saturation of the superhero genre. We're surrounded by computer games, movies, comics, novelizations, art, which are from the DCU, the Marvel Extended Universe. All of that kind of stuff is just prevalent in pop culture. It's also, I mean, it comes from a place of respect and gratitude, that when I was little, it was a much nerdier kind of thing. Perhaps there were less people who were like deeply into that and would be like, actually, Wolverine skeleton's made of adamantium, that kind of thing. But it's something that we all love, and you can see it coming through in different aspects of culture. There's a whole heap of like, for example, superhero and comic book references in golden era hip hop culture. If you can sort of take it from that, it's that loving kind of homage, but there's also a bit of a kind of a satire of the fact that we are now reaching a sort of point of saturation of that genre, so it's ripe for parody.
It's absolutely rich with fantastic characters, and I don't know, but for some reason this character, Mr. Bun Bun, seems to again for me just kind of floated to the surface. I mean, what's that about? Why is his character suddenly?
I have a cosplay head of him. I had to do it. That was just a thing that happened. But he was actually an accident. And this is one of those characters that takes over the scene. There's a couple of them in this book who are characters who just took over from being a bit part character. He was originally simply supposed to be an illustration of the madness of one of the other characters.
Yes.
A guy who is gigantic, muscular barbarian who carries around a pink bunny that wears the same costume as him and talks to it. And at one point, goes into battle against a giant monster. Is like, get them, Mr. Bun Bun. Where's the toy? And everyone's just embarrassed for him, and everything stops. He actually becomes a living and sentient character who's really character. He doesn't actually say anything. I don't think he has any lines in the entire.
No, I don't think that's no.
He can't speak English.
No.
He has a lot of significant looks.
Yes.
And he has an entire chapter which is told from his perspective that gets very weird because he's told in the genre of a children's story.
Yes. I was so glad you did that. That was just a delight.
Horrible things. Which is fun when you're putting these things together and you don't really have 100% of a plan. You've got like an outline and a pinboard, and the house looks like one of those guys who's got a conspiracy theory on a TV show, the red strings and the stuff. And
So actually, I mean, do you kind of plan out your plots in great detail like that, and follow it through, or do you just more let it evolve? Is it that serious amount of planning you do?
I got told ages ago you should when you're going to do any book, you start with one sentence so that you know that it's got a punchy kind of thing. You say the sentence to people. If they go, oh, it sounds boring, don't do it. Take the sentence, do a page, then take the page and make a chapter, and then you can start filling things in. So I'm already, for the next one, I've got a school book which is filled with notes about people and what their past is and what they do and how they relate to people in another book. There's going to be cameo appearances from people from elsewhere, and there's you start doing that. But of course, it's really in a situation you'll be trying to write dialogue which is authentic.
Yes.
And these characters will say things you didn't mean for them to say, and that means that they'll react in ways that you didn't mean for them to react, and suddenly that's better than what I wrote down.
If you were to be one of the superheroes in the book, is there anyone that you would most choose to be, or suit you most, perhaps?
It's difficult because I feel that I am the most like Jack. Like I'm an oafish and comical character. I'm the kind of person who's naturally the focus of universal comedy. It would be funny for my pants to fall down. It would be funny for me to drop things. But I think he struggles the most because he gets a lot of power, and unfortunately, the responsibility is something that catches up with him. I think the guy who has the most fun with it is probably Mortimer, the world's fastest fop. He has the greatest costumes, and he can change them immediately. So he's a proper
yes.
17th century dandy with huge wigs, the silk coats, the slashed brocade, the gold leaf, and he's also faster than the Flash.
Yeah. I think that would have been my choice. Maybe not for the costumes, but for maybe getting things done a bit faster. I've got so much.
Well, that's right. There is a memorable scene in which he saves the day in a way that's a little bit naughty and complete.
I remember that.
You remember?
Yeah, maybe not that. Oh, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah,
just to be that guy. So yeah, that's possibly
that's an advantage.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that then brings us on to Drew, the author. So in your real life, you're a proper newspaper journalist. I mean,
yes, I'm pretending, and they haven't caught on
two
yet.
very different writing worlds. How does that work? How does that work?
I mean, to be super literary, Chuck Palahniuk, the fellow who wrote Fight Club famously, and a bunch of other great books, says that there's two different styles of writing. There's the literary style that comes from academia, where you have beautiful prose, but not a lot happens. There's great classics where they're beautiful to read, and yet at the end you go, wow, that was about 2 days of people talking to each other. And then there's a style that comes from journalism, which is you're telling a sort of really meaty story. Of course, in the real world, you get 250 to sort of 300 words, and it's usually about what the mayor said about thing. But
You got to make that interesting.
It's fun. I mean, you get to meet a lot of characters as a small town journalist. You could probably make a sitcom out of being the journalist in this part of the world, where we're in a sort of fairly rural New Zealand, out in the middle of nowhere with beaches and farms and hills and places like that. My real job today was to go and see a bunch of gentlemen who salvaged an entire shipwreck from the 1880s.
Wow.
And never could you have found a better archetype for some fantasy dwarves, like those who are like artificers, men with slide rules and flat caps and white hair and mustaches, talking about preserving things and cannons and woodworking and so forth. They could be siege engineers. So they're real people, and their real story is awesome. And with no parody and calling them dwarves, I will put that in the news. Also, you get to observe all of these people who have interesting foibles and strange quirks and different jobs, and you can use that to help build characters that have a little bit of that three-dimensionality. Everyone always asks me, "Oh, is there someone based on me in the book?" And I'm like, if I told you, you'd assume it was someone who was really nasty.
Yeah, I mean, some say that comedy writing is one of the hardest genres to write, and there's absolutely something you have taken to of late. And I mean, going back to the early stuff you published, the cyberpunk stuff, that was really kind of serious William Gibson stuff. But I saw things kind of start to turn to the really darkly comic in Halo of Thorns and so forth. And now you've gone full on comedy for Full Chrome and Gad's Army. Is that a genre that you're now comfortable to settle into carrying on, or you're going to mix it up a bit in the future?
Well, I kind of, what happened was I was informed by several of my friends, you're funny, you tell funny jokes, you should do stand-up comedy, you should do that kind of thing. And of course, I don't know if I get up on stage and do that. I have done some comical battle rap stuff, which is cool as a hobby. And people say, "Oh, no, you're funny, you tell a great joke. You should put more of that into your work." And I was thinking, we've had these amazing authors, people like Douglas Adams, people like Sir Terry, we mentioned previously, who've absolutely put their mark on that genre, and there haven't been a huge amount of other people following on. And I think it's maybe because it's terrifying to be compared to these giants.
Yeah.
Well, I got nothing to lose.
Yes.
let's just give it a shot. There's things have progressed. So a parody of modern science fiction is different from a parody of golden era science fiction.
Yeah.
A parody of like what's happening with the superhero genre, with fantasy in the post Lord of the Rings being a movie era. you know. So yeah, there's scope for a bit of that, and I give people the drafts and people laugh, so I'm like, it must be okay.
Carry on going, yeah. I mean, if you kind of look at, I'm just going to lift them up here, the immense stack of books. I mean, that's a lot of words there, and it really is. Do you have a kind of a writing regime? Do you say, right, I'm going to write X thousand words per day, or how does it work?
Best intentions is like going to the gym for a normal person, like not for like The Rock or John Cena. It's like going to the gym for a normal person. You go, yes, I'm going to smash it. I'm going to build, and I'm going to get massive gains, and I'm going to drink weird protein shakes. But what it's all about is if you're onto something which is working for you, you tend to want to write more, and you think of a good gag or you think of a good setup where it's going to pay off with this scene. It just drives you to it. I work best early in the morning. Yeah. I'll often get up and type stuff very, very early in the morning, and then go to work. Because I'm not usually a late at night kind of guy for this kind of thing.
Yes. Sorry to keep you up.
So I try and have a regime, but really it's the motivation is, once you've got a good story going, you want to sort of go, oh, what happens next?
I mean, I guess no interview in the 20s can avoid the C word. Has the COVID restrictions and so forth affected you so much down in New Zealand? It's been very different down there for you.
Yeah, well, we've had probably the longest lockdowns of anyone. I think we've had the least deaths per capita of any country in the world that actually has had disease. There's a lot of people here. There's a lot of people protesting and saying, New Zealand is a comedy country. I mean, I know it is. We want to be taken seriously as a global power, but there's only 5 million people here. And it is a bit of a funny country. We can't help but have, even in our most serious politics, moments of silliness and a certain sense that it's all just a bit of a farce, and at any moment John Cleese's going to silly walk across behind everyone. We're a little bit funny. So while this is a serious issue, everything has been tinged with people having a bit of a laugh about it. And it's a good place to be when you're writing this kind of stuff. And I'm hard at work on the next one, which is, once again, it's funny. It's supernatural. It's set in the 1980s, and there'll be some cameo appearances from people from previous book. So
I can't wait. I really can't wait. That's fantastic. Well, Drew, thanks so much for staying up late. I know you got work in the morning. Oh, no, it's just
no,
it's not. It's Friday, isn't it? Oh, fantastic. Great. Well, that's great.
Right. Yeah.
So, anyways, thanks for talking about your new book. Wish you the very best of luck with the next book. Keep on typing away.
Awesome. Hey, cheers for checking in, and for all you people out there, thanks for reading.
Excellent.